So we had a chance to, before lunch, hear from Brian on the idea of meaningful membership, not just wanting to have membership as a placeholder, but to have meaningful membership, and just thinking through some practical ideas and suggestions for how we can make membership meaningful in our church. So Brian, wonderful imagery and encouragement. Those three ideas that you're giving us with the 9 demarcs. Very clever. Maybe one place I'd love to just start is I really appreciated you not only talking about the weightiness of this idea and wanting to communicate that weightiness in our church, but how you are connecting the idea of church membership with the name of God. And so I would just love to double click on that and just kind of, if you can just unpack that for a little bit more for us and walk us through how you communicate that to your church.
Matthew 28, go therefore, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And my bad, I just have a very soft voice.
It's a tender moment.
So at the beginning of the Bible. That doesn't pop out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Right? So the Bible begins with showing us God making stuff for his glory, crowning him making stuff for his glory with making us in his image. Male and female, he created them, right? So God did not make humanity to sufficiently know him, steward his glory as an individual, but it's always been as a people. Like he made a people. His name is to be known and displayed and loved and cherished and be delighted in by a people. That's how the Bible starts. And that gets opposed, that gets fumbled, that gets messed up. But all through that, God preserves his intention in that. Mm-hmm. And he forwards that. Moses, God redeems, he brings Israel out of Egypt. And the Bible says, right, to bring him to himself. Moses, who's a servant of the Lord, show me your glory. And God tells him his name. And Moses is telling Israel, this is how we got here. This is who we're made for. He made us to be his people, to carry his name. His law lets us know how we carry that name. But he's brought us out to carry his name. This is what God is doing in sustaining his people despite their sin, despite their enemies. And how is this going to get worked out? How is he going to make us able to steward his name as his people? All the kings they had weren't successful in leading in it. All the prophets they had weren't successful in calling for it. All the priests they had weren't successful in mediating it, but pointing to it, calling for it. Then God makes that promise, that new covenant promise. Their sin sends them away. They're supposed to steward the name of God. They fail at stewarding the name of God. That has consequences. They're in captivity. God says, I'm going to fix this. He didn't say, He said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do something in you that is going to secure the effectiveness of you being my people. I'm going to give you a new heart. I'm going to put my spirit in you, make you walk in my ways. I'm going to clean you from all your uncleanlinesses. I'm going to bring you to, he says, I'm going to be your God. You will be my people. And we know the new covenant, that gets fulfilled when the Lord Jesus shows up, dies on the cross, raises from the grave. This is what I think Paul was trying to establish the Ephesians in, which somebody will get into, but I will not say who. But by the time we get to chapter 2, what happened to you? You were dead in your trespasses and sins. God made you alive together in Christ. Now you're his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, so that they can do what? And that's why, this is not Mark's kind of, one of their main kind of proof text about the glory of the church is Ephesians chapter 3, displaying the glory of God to everyone, the watching cosmos. And that's how the Bible concludes, right? In Revelation 21, New Jerusalem, the people of God come down as a bride prepared for her husband, and he will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and he will be their God. So that's the throughway. So when we find that Jesus shows up, calls people into his kingdom, through the gospel makes people alive. And then the commission to the church is go identify my people, that's what my disciples, and then put my name on them. Like baptize them in my name. Huh? Oh, yeah. So you gather in them. I was thinking Matthew 28. But yeah, gather in the name. But submerge them in my name. Put my name on them. They're to be known by my name. And that comes with commands. They're going to live in such a way that this is the new covenant promise. I'm going to vindicate my holiness through them. Not just to them, but through them. The world will know who I am. They're going to delight in who I am. And so I think that's like the braid of the people of God going throughout the Bible, that when it's followed, you appreciate where the church comes from in Matthew 16 and 18. Where's that about? It's like, man, this has always been what God's been building, a people for himself who are effective in actually honoring his name as they live.
And Brother, I love that, because I think even some of the objections that you were raising that you might typically hear, well, you have this image of you're reading a book outside, the wind is blowing the pages, you need something heavy enough to actually hold that in place, because we hear, oh, I don't need to go to church, or I can watch online, or I can this and this and this, and I just love you're not watering down the seriousness and the cost, but you're motivating through the glory and the privilege of bearing that name. So well said.
And it snaps in Uzzah. The ark's fallen.
Yeah.
Uzzah goes to catch it. I love R.C. Sproul. He assumed his hand was more holy than the ground. But God struck Uzzah down and killed him for multiple reasons. They weren't supposed to be carrying the ark that way.
Yeah. That's
not how it was supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to touch the ark. So in one sense, it doesn't matter really what you want to do. You know what I'm saying? And when people are, is it because it's not about my name at all? Like, it's about his. And what he says goes. That we're the only people on the planet that are committed to whatever he says goes. Yeah, and we live that out as a community.
Any questions, comments for Brian, guys?
Jared, what'd you think?
I thought it was an exceptional message. Maybe the best that I've never heard.
Jared
You
was
were
teaching his class.
Jared was teaching a class.
Sorry. I was shaping and molding young minds.
Shaping and molding young minds.
Yeah,
Kind of like
shaping
being a potter.
And molding, yes.
Yeah, that's crazy.
All right. Jeff, you had a question for him.
I do have a question. I was really helped by a number of things that you said, Brian. I'm really grateful for your ministry to us today. One thing that kind of, at first, I was frustrated by a little bit, and then you won me over to it, was when you were saying, let's make membership kind of our thing as a pastor. Like, let's make the church our thing and talk about that. Because a lot of times I get the criticism, it's like, or we can get, maybe even just self-reflective. It's like, I want the gospel to be my thing, right? I want the gospel to be my thing. And I feel like find myself talking about church membership a lot because people in my church are not educated about it, even if they've been a part of other churches. And I get a little bothered by that sometimes. But then you connected, you talked about it in terms of marriage and how, no, we really emphasize, we make marriage our thing because it speaks about the gospel, because it's connected to the gospel and it proclaims the gospel. It either does that rightly or wrongly. So how can we connect? So I put two and two together, and the reason why you want us to make membership our thing is because it says something about the gospel. It helps us to preach the gospel by our manner of life together. How do we connect that for our people?
Well, if you take away the redeemed people, what do we mean by gospel? So it's not just that Jesus died and rose for no reason, and then it then gets applied to people. At the heart of the gospel is that God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have eternal life. Ephesians 5, again, husbands, love your wife, as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. So included in the mission statement of the gospel is a view of the church. I think the more you help people appreciate that, I think it helps them appreciate how it's in there. We're not adding stuff to what God's doing. We're archaeologists. We're uncovering what's already there. We're moving sand out of the way so that people can see what's actually there. We're not putting stuff there. Because if we do that, that's not going to be compelling to anybody. But it's there. We're just trying to uncover and show it so that people can see, oh, this has actually always been in there. For our sake, God made him who knew no sin to be sin. For our sake, God made him who knew no sin to be sin. So that in him we become the righteousness of God, right? The we is in there. And this is Jesus' whole prayer in John 17. I want them to be one with us. So anyways.
I think it's useful to remind people that the church really is a part of the indicative of the gospel, right? Think 1 Peter 2:10, once you were not a people, but now you are a people. Once you had not received mercy, now you have received mercy. We typically talk about the gospel as that second line, I didn't have mercy, now I have mercy. But that second line is actually parallel to a first line. Once you were not a people, now you are a people. The people, in Ephesians 2, the first half, the second half, same story, right? But God raised us up, seated us with him. But God, you who are afar off, been brought near. One new man at the cross. So we often say a God, man, Christ response. I mean, really, there's a sense in which it's God, man, Christ response church. Or church, God, man, Christ church response. He died for a people. Now, that's not the local church, that's the universal church. But where does the universal show up?
Where do we see it?
Where do we see it? The local. So yeah, you got to connect the church to the gospel for people.
I noted for the crowd, when you were in your third point right before you went to your 9 demarcs, and I quoted it, you put,
Book coming
say,
2025, 9
Yeah.
demarcs.
Yeah. Pastor is announcing, and he says something to the effect of, all members and regular attenders are invited, and all of you went, like, so it was like this, I was like, oh, okay, so that's a thing in here. So I would just love to hear you elaborate on other examples maybe you've heard like that. Obviously, it's influential and impactful, they're feeling it, but.
I don't know if I have other examples. That's the main one in my mind. Or when somebody says, well, and I've heard other versions of it too. Hey, this is members meeting, everybody's welcome to come. And, there are things that can confuse what you might be intending to build. But I don't know if I have other examples in that. I think that's the main one I'm aware of.
We're going to stand and renew our church covenant. If you're a member of this church, it kind of delineates who's sitting, who's standing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think is a helpful delineation.
Yeah.
You've planted 2 churches. Did you start with church membership in both churches? How did you do that?
We did meetings before.
And this is both churches.
When our church constituted, and we don't have, like, what it means to constitute a church is a little vague in the Bible. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? And so what we tried to do is acknowledge we had a sending church that had keys, that was authorized to commission a church. And on behalf of that, a church was being birthed, but from commitments in which a group of Christians is committing to then steward God's name according to his word as a local church. We're taking, it's like in one sense a marriage ceremony where somebody's saying in a vow, I'm going to change my status to now be united to this task ongoingly. You had a group of Christians, obviously not as enduring until death, but you had a group of Christians who committed before the Lord to vow to steward the name of God according to his word, and exercising the use of his keys.
But you had done membership interviews with all those people? Mm-hmm. Okay. It's like 20 of them or something.
Yeah.
Philip, anything really?
Brian, thanks for being a friend who I just depend on to lift my eyes to the Lord and his designs for his church. There's just so many ways your ministry has helped me in that way, in such a way that when you got up to talk today, I thought, okay, he's going to give me a big view of God. So thanks for being dependable in that way. It strikes me that when we're talking about things like connecting membership, baptism, and the Lord's Supper in my own pastoral ministry, I think the biggest enemy to that I face regularly is individualism and individualism in our culture. Living in Dubai for a little while, a lot of the people who had come to Dubai for work were from cultures where community was a huge priority. So with them, I think that "this is us" analogy really resonates. But I'm finding more and more that, especially in highly transitory areas of the country, even "this is us" isn't resonating anymore. That people conceive of themselves as just solo.
This is me.
Solo operators. Yeah. And so when you're talking about connecting those things, and we're acknowledging culturally individualism is everywhere, how do we pastor with that kind of attitude, reflect leadership approach that's enthusiastic and empowering, and yet also trying to dismantle people's deeply held opinions about their individual Christian life, including your own members?
I think one of the most helpful things you can do to people is tell them in that situation, no, you cannot. And I just don't think people are used to doing that. They're not used to experiencing that. And when they have to experience that, I think you get to have different conversations. So most people, I think,
Can you guys all hear Brian?
sorry. Most people, I think, what's crazy is I used to rap, so I should have like good mic etiquette.
I always see him putting it like right here.
This is the
right?
talk show. Yeah, you know. Yeah. I think people aren't used to being told no, they can't do stuff that they would like to do. That is a good thing to do. And I think it's just helpful to give them categories like that. Because what I found is that most Christians want to honor God. And they don't know, they think you're being dramatic. Like, it ain't that deep, Pastor, you know? And it's not until you make them appreciate, no, it is that deep. It is so deep, no. And it's okay if you don't want to roll here, you know what I mean? You can find another spot that's probably going to let you kind of do that. But we understand these things to be connected. If you're going to be a member of this church, you're not just submitting to me in leadership, which you would be, but this is how our congregation is stewarding the name of God together. And you're actually going to work against that if you're not willing to, be in unity with us in this view. And I'll give you an example. So we just planted in Minneapolis. We're from an area, I would say, very big God theology, norm. A lot of different thoughts just about church and ecclesiology. Of our 17 constituting members, many of them were actually members at churches. We had to baptize 6 of them. And so there was just a lot of, we didn't know it was that deep. But what was sweet is nobody was mad when you show them in the Bible. And you can't get mad that they want you to show them in the Bible. If you can't show them, you can't get mad at them. It's the burden of proof is on the pastor to be able to say, thus saith the Lord, do you see it? Do you see it? Do you see it? If they don't see it yet, that's okay. Let's wait until you see it. But I think it's hard to be in an environment where it's being promoted. I think it's being communicated from exegesis. And the congregation, this is us happens when people do it. So people are like, oh, we're not going to live as family. It's like, that's a disobedience thing. You don't have an option to not be the family of God. That's not what we do. The one another's aren't suggestions. It's how we prove we're Christians. If you're not willing to prove you're a Christian, we shouldn't assume you are one. So when Jesus says, this love must mark you, this is how the world's to know you're believers. How much more so the brothers and sisters? But when people hear that, when you expect it of them, again, remember the Titans. You know what I'm saying? They was trying to do their own thing. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until Coach Boone got with them, that they got in line. And I just think there needs to be some of those points just to let people know, hey, it's okay if you don't get it. We want to give you time to get it. But until you get it, let's not. So one thing we encourage people to do who are not members of churches is say, listen, it's totally fine if you're not ready to join this church. You don't have to join this church. I just want you to join a church. If you want to join this church, but you're not ready to join this church, do not take the Lord's Supper. And use that time to pray that God would give you clarity and to feel the urgency that you are out of place in Christianity. Like, that's not a bad thing for you to feel when you're not a member of a church. And I just think people don't have categories for no being a good thing, a not yet. What you desire is a good thing. Wait until you pursue it, and let the you can't be urgency to pursue. And within a few weeks, usually they're like, all right, I'm ready, Pastor. I don't know, it made sense. It's like, thought it would. And that's the grace of God in people. He gives us his spirit to cause us to walk in his ways. And when the saints it's like a good coach. When you call them to what they're supposed to do and you encourage them in it, most people rise to the task. And they're eager to, so.
Well, and I think, brother, your tone in this and saying no, you're modeling it well. I think you model it well for us in your church. Your tone is not no. It's what you just said. You're trying to encourage them and show them scriptures. It's in love. It's patient. It's gentle, but it's also immovable. When God says this is the way to do it, you're immovable in that sense. So, yeah, you're modeling that well.
Praise report. We have a 60-year-old brother. He's
60?
67. He's been a Christian for about 15 years. Was out of church for 10 years. Never been baptized in his life. Comes to our church. We're like, oh man, love you. He's wonderful. We think these things are connected, and there's a beauty to it. And we're teaching him, and he when sometimes people buy in and they hold it even tighter than you do. So what was really sweet was he went from, okay, tell me more, to all right. So he went to join, and what we'll do is if you're gonna join a church and you haven't been baptized, because we don't have a baptistry, we'll bring you into membership with a pending baptism. So this is just saying at the first earliest convenience you vowed to be baptized. And so we had that with him so we could bring him in, because he had been around for a while. He was like, I'm waiting to take the Lord's Supper until I get baptized. I said, brother, that's what's up. So he's got a 67-year-old guy. He's retired, loves Jesus, hadn't really been taught, hadn't really been pressed. And when he was, he just, he came alive in it. And so that's encouraging.
Lift your microphone up.
Sorry.
All right. Any questions for Brian? Yeah, right there. You gonna stand up? We'll give you the microphone. Wait. We'll give you the microphone. Name and church too.
You're good.
You're good.
It kicked on.
Okay. Brandy, First Baptist Church of Gallatin. So my question is, when you have an enthusiastic pastor on meaningful membership, that you have elders in the church who may be resistant to that, almost adamantly resistant, what's a good way for members of the church to help support the pastor, like in one-on-one conversations when it's brought up and things like that? What is a good, gentle, godly way to support this whole idea?
I will just tell you ahead of time, I do not have a lot of help for you. That's a very tough position to be in. It's like when mom and dad are fighting in front of the kids, What you can do that we know is effective is, I think, when you're aware of that and you know that, I think it's a call to pray. Yeah. Sorry, anybody else might have other things on top of that, but that's a complicated.
I think I'm with you, brother. Yeah. Way back.
Hi, I'm Owen from Fortuna Baptist Church. You may have articulated something close to this earlier, and my question is kind of two parts, but you might have said something along the lines of, outside of the local church, you cannot experience the fullness of Christ, and local church membership is implied with that. And the second part is, if that is true, would you reject or amend the statement, it's a relationship, not a religion?
I think I understand the question. Let me know if this. Okay, I can see you nod. I was like, where'd Owen go? Let me do the second question first, then the first one. This a relationship, not a religion. I get what somebody means when they say that. I think what they're trying to get at is, this is not a tradition. The tradition doesn't carry the relationship. I think that's what they mean. I think it's a very unhelpful phrase. I wish disappeared, because the relationship is a religion. and the religion is intended to be a relationship. And so, you know, so it's almost, when somebody says that, you just kind of, what do you mean by that? Because, you know, he said, don't do that. And if you do that, he's, you know, there's a degree to which he says you don't have your relationship is evidenced by your religion. The first question, you know, the verse that comes to mind about missing out on the church is missing out on Jesus. And I think there's a couple different things. And I don't hope I'm not taking anyone's sermon that's coming up. But Dr. Allen did it to me, so boo-hoo. Listen to this. Again, this is Ephesians chapter 3, verse 10, so that through the church the manifold wisdom of God might now be made known to the rulers and authorities in heavenly places. This was according to the eternal purpose that he has realized in Christ Jesus our Lord. That's not the part I was going to talk about. But he's talking about the church and the glory of the church. Next section, for this reason, I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named, that according to the riches of his glory, he may grant you to be strengthened with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. Your hearts through faith. That you, being rooted and grounded in love, who's rooted and grounded in love? Again, the church may have strength together to comprehend. You may be rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend with all the saints what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled with all the fullness of God. So when we say people are missing out on what is supposed to be experienced in Jesus through relationship with his people, I'm thinking categories, like, and there's a bunch of different ones that you can, I think, kind of add on top of that. But that'd be something. Did that interact with what you were asking, Owen? Okay, praise God.
Right here. You stand up, sir.
Hi, Bill Rogers, Liberty Road Baptist Church, Jeff City. So I noticed Capitol Hill Baptist, for example, I noticed has a process where they'll have a membership class of 12 weeks. So while someone's going through that class, let's say they come from another church, they've been faithful, they're coming through that class, would you suggest that they forego communion while they're in the class?
You talking about my church, like our church?
Yeah, and if they're going through that
Yeah,
membership process.
yeah. I think, I don't mean to overstrain the marriage connection, but I think it's just helpful. When you ain't made the commitment, you ain't made the commitment yet. You know what I'm saying? So we can talk about stuff you get to enjoy on the other side, but until you there, that's off limits. And so for me, I think learning about the church is a wonderful part of the process. But so when I go to other churches, there's a time that I will abstain from taking the Lord's Supper. I'm very sympathetic to closed communion. I practice close communion, but I'm sympathetic to closed communion. But I don't feel left out when I'm watching a congregation profess their corporate love together. I actually think it's beautiful to watch. And so I think some people feel like, oh, you're saying I'm not in the body of Christ. It's just like, well, they're not saying that. They could be saying that, but I don't take them to be saying that.
So Brian, to be clear, so if someone transferred from my church to your church, moved over there, while they're in the membership process, they couldn't take the Lord's Supper?
Well, no, I'm assuming that they would still be a member of your church.
Right.
Yeah.
So in that case, if they're moving from another church.
Yeah, if they're still a member of a church.
Yeah.
But again, I still think I would encourage people to wait. I think it's actually a good thing. It keeps...
I disagree.
And I love you still. I think there's a sweetness to considering what you're saying you're a part of, what you're not a part of, and waiting until that's recognized so that you can make it with more meaning. We don't require people to not take the Lord's Supper in such a case if they're already a member of a church and they're transferring. But they always ask because it's interesting when you teach it the way, it's actually a natural conclusion they usually come to. It's like, oh, so should I wait before I'm a member here? And I actually don't think that's a bad thing. But those are kind of...
So Brian, fence the table right now. How would you fence the table?
We are not a church. I wouldn't do it. Trick question.
Hypothetically,
Fenced.
how would you fence the table?
It takes us about 20, 25 minutes.
Let's
To
not do
fence
that.
it? 25 minutes
Well,
to fence it?
the section,
Wow.
the section,
Oh, the whole explanation.
the Lord's Supper part. So we use the scriptural call to worship for that week, and we try to preach the gospel from it. We try to preach the death, burial, and the resurrection of Christ from that text. I think it helps gospel presentations. You try to make them fresh, and just connecting it using the language of your scriptural call to worship passage, I think gives it good diversity. After you share the gospel, we then try to help people appreciate that's what the meal represents. And then we say, this is pretty much verbatim, if you're a member in good standing at a church that preaches the same gospel you just heard, we do invite you to participate with us. But I'll usually read 1 Corinthians 11, 27 through 29, which is what I reference in the message, and say this is encouraged for us to take, and we're encouraged to take it with caution and with carefulness. And so help us do this, and we always go around three bases. Those who are unbelieving in our midst. So if you're here and you're not a Christian, if you reject the Lord Jesus, you actually do not have a place at this meal right now. You can if you turn from your sin. But if you pushed away the salvation the Lord Jesus offers, you've actually pushed away your place at the table. The second group is those who are unrepentant. So if somebody's professing to be a Christian, while they know they're walking in sin, which is what he's bringing up. We don't want anybody to eat or drink judgment on themselves. And so if there's a way in which you're hiding sin, and you know you're not hiding it before God, but you're lying in your profession, and whatever the scripture call to worship is, that kind of flavor, that gospel text, it usually gives specific ways that can look. So I was talking with a brother earlier, 1 Peter 1 was the scriptural call to worship this Sunday. So you have be holy in all your conduct, all the way down to having purified your souls by your obedience to the truth for a sincere brotherly love, right? So you cover everything from recognize areas of unholiness to you not loving your brother and sister in the Lord. We would say that needs to be repented of, and then it can be participated in. And feel free to come have a conversation with one of the members or me before. And the third one is we always bring up the unforgiving. So at its heart, the meal is a meal of forgiveness that we've been died for. And love, and that's why above all we're to love, because it covers a multitude of sins. So if you're here, and you're embittered towards someone else, especially a brother, sister in the Lord, there's a contradiction between you saying you have forgiveness for you and you want to extend it to someone else. And then after that, we sing a song while we pass out the elements, read 1 Corinthians 11, what I received from the Lord I also delivered to you. And then we take the elements together and pray.
Amen.
Yeah.
I would add, even if you don't come down where Brian is on where you should abstain in terms of transitioning membership, I do think it's a good highlight for us as pastors and church leaders to be helping shepherd our members in meaningful membership even after they've left us. So to be following up with them and saying, have you found a church to join? Are you pursuing the membership process there? If so, then we're gonna vote to see you out. We're gonna make it meaningful on our side as you try to make it meaningful where you are now. So I think that's a part we can play to keep reinforcing it in that transition period.
Right back there.
Did I answer your question, brother? You did. Okay, praise the Lord.
My name is Matthew, and I'm a member of Olivet Baptist Church in Wichita, Kansas. And I would be interested if maybe we could go around the horn and what Brian just did. How do each of you or how do your churches fence the table? Like, what do you say?
I would be very similar to Brian. If you're a member of if you're committed to another local church,
Yours would be in a much deeper voice.
if you're committed to a local church that believes the same gospel you heard preached here, you're welcome to take the Lord's Supper with us. If you're not yet a believer, I don't have the three categories. I like that. But if you're not yet a believer, or if there's any other reason that you don't think you should take the Lord's Supper, there's no reason to be embarrassed. Just let it pass by. Use it as a time of reflection.
Same.
Pretty close, though we made one amendment for an elder who was from California who struggled with the fact that a lot of the people he knew, Christians, family members, go to churches that don't practice membership. And he felt sensitive to, though they were actively a part of their churches, excluding them from the table when family members and friends, when they visited. So we decided that you could either say member if your conscience as an elder is your fencing. We could say member, or for his sake, and we're all kind of doing it now, kind of explain the guts of what membership is. And the guts that's significant, I think, is it's not just you deciding subjectively, yeah, I'm a Christian. It's somebody's recognizing you. A church, which has authority, recognizes you. So what we say is, if you're a member here, if you're a baptized believer, and you are committed to and affirmed by another church, you're welcome to take the supper here. So that committed to from the person and recognized by. So even if it's some church out in California or wherever else, or Oregon, that doesn't practice formal membership, there's something there that they can grab onto.
I'm not currently serving as an elder, but I'm a member of Liberty Baptist Church and have been an elder there. And we practice close communion. Me and Jared are at the same church, and he's an elder there.
Close or closed?
Close. No D.
We do something really similar to what you just said, Jonathan. So we'll talk about commitment.
Oh, it was you who gave me the idea too.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah, because our elders were kind of like all, having not a fight. We were disagreeing on it. And then I was in your church and I heard you do that. And I took that back and I'm like, hey, how about this?
But you acted, but Jonathan, you acted like you owned that. Like you.
I forgot
He's
I'd
done
taken
that
it
for
from
me a
him.
lot.
Yeah.
Like, if you read something good
was
in
even
one of
making
his
up somebody
books,
from
you know,
Oregon. He was like,
I'm the silent voice behind.
I have a question for you guys who practice close communion, as we do. Do you make a distinction between those who've been baptized as believers versus those who may be members in good standing of a Presbyterian church? Can they receive the Lord's Supper in your church?
Depends if you ask me individually versus you leave it to your conscience by what I said.
so you don't ask for the sake of your conscience.
No comment. If you define baptism wrongly, that's on you.
Yeah, we're in it.
I mean, I can.
So you just say baptized, not baptized as a believer or receive believer's baptism, or
Right.
you just say if you've been baptized
If you are a baptized believer.
and you're a member of a good standing.
You say
If you are a baptized believer.
okay.
We do something similar to that because what we're doing is affirming the right or the authority of each local church so even though we think that local church is in error on the way that they're defining baptism, if they were to join our church, they would have to be baptized.
Yeah.
If they're in transient communion visiting our church
But
and they're defining it.
I regularly have that conversation though. So when you fence it that way, I regularly am asked that, and that's how I will say, I think you need to be baptized before you take the Lord's Supper.
I see.
And you define what that means.
Right.
And would that include those who are at churches that do not have meaningful membership or maybe membership at all? They're a faithful Christian, they affirm
That's the caveat that
biblical
Jonathan's given,
gospel.
I think.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're committed to
Foreshadowing.
and recognized.
Okay.
However your church practices it, you're committed to and recognized by.
This is what your talk is on?
No, this is
Oh, I
how
thought
I
you said
fence
this is
the,
what
this
his
is how
talk was
our
gonna be
elders
on.
sometimes fence the table.
I got you. All right. That's why nobody laughed at my foreshadowing joke. I thought you said this is what his talk was on. I was
No.
like, oh, we're foreshadowing
No.
the talk.
All right, one more question, then we'll break here. All right, brother, I see your hand, but I want to go back there.
Hello, my name is Braden Jones. I'm from Berean Baptist Church. I like how this has turned into a conversation on the Lord's Supper. A wonderful time. My question is...
Brother, where are you at?
Berean Baptist Church. It's like Bolivar. Sorry, yes, Bolivar. Just a little bit north of Springfield. Not
Gotcha.
My question is, when is the best time to primarily observe the Lord's Supper? On a Sunday morning where you would have an expectation of unrepentant people or non-believers there? Or should there be a mix where you do it in a service that is primarily aimed at existing believers? A healthy mixture? Thoughts?
Good question. I don't have a Bible answer for this question at all. I think the one thing is just whenever the church is more able to assemble together. So I think if you're going to do it in the evening, but it is known that it's hard for the church to assemble, and it's not expected for the church to assemble there, I would say you don't want to do it. You want to do it when the entire church understands it is expected of them to assemble together. So you have multiple times when that's the case. I think that's, its own thing. But I think for most of us, that would probably mean Sunday morning. But that's kind of the best leaning towards an answer I
think that's a Bible answer because 1 Corinthians.
When you are assembled together.
Yeah, when you're assembled. So if our whole church, so we do it Sunday morning because by matter of our covenant, that's when we're requiring our church to gather as a part of the covenant. We don't say you have to be there on Sunday evening, though we would like them there. That's why we wouldn't do it on Sunday evening, but do it on Sunday morning because that's when we're asking everyone that's a member of the church to gather.
Yeah, I would to put a little more Bible behind it as well. I think though churches I love disagree on this point, right? We haven't mentioned 1 Corinthians 10:17 because there is one bread. We who are many are one body, for we all partake of the one bread. Which is to say, how do we know we are one body? Well, because we partake of the one bread. Partaking of the one bread reveals, illumines that we are one body. That's what the Lord's Supper does. It advertises, here's the church right here. So Paul then applies that in chapter 11, saying when you're coming together in the ways he described, you're not doing that. And his final conclusion around verses 32 or 33 is like, wait for one another. So wait for one another. It is a church meal. So whatever is your main service that you require members to come to, such that if they're not coming to that service on a regular basis, you're moving towards church discipline. I think it's best. I'm not going to say necessarily required. I think it's best to take the supper in that meal, or in that service.
I would just add, the two are meant to work in tandem, right? If you're fencing well and you practice meaningful membership, then there isn't the immediate fear of just like, what if an unbeliever takes this, right? So you can't see their heart. So you're doing what the Lord has allowed you to do.
And it's a great witness. I think taking the Lord's Supper as a church when there's unbelievers present or those that are fenced out of it. One of the painful things I think we experience as parents is that, our kids don't take the Lord's Supper with us. And it's and that's an evangelistic work that's happening on them, that they can see, I know this is a free gospel, but I know that there's something that I'm not yet participating in here and that I'm not yet a part of. And so I think it's really helpful for people who are outside to see the church take the Lord's Supper.
I have had more people come to me provoked in their conscience or in their approach to Christianity by how we talk about the Lord's Supper than any other single category in my pastoral ministry. It is the most helpfully provocative thing that happens.
Well, when Paul says people are dying because they're doing it wrong, you listen.
And I
Yes.
think, well, you should.
It's a gift of God that he said that.
Yeah.
And I think the thing to remember about not taking the Lord's Supper in an unworthy manner, Paul was not primarily thinking about unbelievers. He was primarily thinking about Christians who are walking disobediently, who are being disorderly in how they live. And I just think sometimes we don't give them a vision for if your life, we don't just mean that you're professing. We're talking about how you're living could render you unworthy to participate right now. And that's our concern, is that those things are aligned.
Can I say, are you about to wrap it up?
Jared, you were going to say something.
I just had a pastoral question, I thought, as an application. Shut-ins, those who are homebound, not able to attend the gathering, may they receive the Lord's Supper?
I say no.
That's our practice.
With the volume
Your
of voice.
practice is no, or
it's a no.
Apparently, Charles Spurgeon said yes.
Well, Charles Spurgeon had a traveling communion
That's
cup.
right. That's what I'm saying.
So I only quoted him when he suited me. I just want to be clear. And similar to Alexander Hamilton, when he was dying, many people believe, like, it seems he became like he was a believer at the end of his life. There's good reason to think that. And he was so wretched with his lifestyle before that his one desire was to take the Lord's Supper. And the minister who went to visit him and go over the gospel with him, he was like, I just want to take the Lord's Supper. He was like, we do not do that. I was like, right on, man. Now, I heard he actually softened later. I don't know if that's true, but I just think it's, again, we are not supposed to bridge the gap between people's limitations. I think we want to help them long for heaven, and we're all going to long for heaven in different ways. And it's kind of the person who goes online. It's like, oh, I can't come and watch online. It's like, you can do that. It is not the same. Like, you're not gathering with us when you are not gathered with us. You're being encouraged. Oh, I thought you were about to say something. Like, you're being encouraged, and I'm encouraged that you are encouraged. But it's good that you know you are not actually gathered with us when you're not gathered with us. And that means we can still visit each other, but there's certain things we're just not going to get to enjoy until we're in glory. And I don't think there's anything wrong with encouraging the saints in that state. I think you want to visit them. You want to be with them. You can commune with them in fellowship. Those are my personal thoughts about that. But
We can pick this up in the next panel.
Well, just do a search on the
Mark?
Landmarks website, and there's a for and against on that question. Just do a search on the Landmarks. There's a for and against.
All right, we're gonna take 3 minutes to break. We'll start back up at 3:11. We're gonna turn the corner to looking at how meaningful membership actually matters for evangelism in the local church. So take a 3-minute break, stretch your legs. We'll come back in 3 minutes.